Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the Full Court Press Hydrogen interview series. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Oliver Weinmann, who is the Managing Director of Vattenfall Innovation and also President of the German Hydrogen Association and board member also, if I'm correct, of the European Hydrogen Association. So we have the authority today joining us today to discuss all things hydrogen. Of course, which is becoming much more of a buzzword, particularly in the last year or two, as the world grows increasingly challenged in all directions. And of course, Dr. Weinmann, very timely to have you with us today, particularly from the German point of view. Let's start by discussing the elephant in the room question, which is, you know, we've seen power prices, gas prices, of course, across the world, and particularly Europe, the last few months, since last winter, being a challenge. And of course, the crisis and conflict in Ukraine has just exacerbated that all the more. And Germany in particular is having its challenges and making some very serious decisions today about how it's going to tackle its immediate energy supply crisis and potential future threat to its gas. But let's talk about hydrogen. And do you think that those challenges that have come to the fore in the last few months have propelled the hydrogen argument forward?
Yes, definitely yes. So it's what we see now, what you saw in the past with development of hydrogen is that it was mainly driven by climate change, fighting climate change, and of course, which is the biggest issue we have in the world. Of course, the war right now is yeah, it's more dominant in media, of course, and a lot of people are suffering, but still we have this climate change, and this was the main reason to look into hydrogen in the recent years. And yes, but in addition, now we have this war in Ukraine, and we need to get more energy independent. We need to get rid of Russian gas, and this is propelling the hydrogen issue as well. And so it's even boosting the development of hydrogen.
And how, I mean, practically speaking, how quickly can that boost or acceleration happen? What does it mean, practically speaking, looking at a 12-month, 24-month scenario, let's say?
Yeah, what's happening in Europe right now is that a lot of companies are willing to invest. As we know from Hydrogen Europe or the German Hydrogen Association, for many companies we are talking to, it's a lot of drive we are behind this hydrogen. A lot of companies really are willing to invest. What we need is, of course, is a kind of, we need to put the right regulation in place. We need of support of the European Commission, we need some support of national governments. European Commission made a very good statement yesterday with the Repower EU and the announcement to produce 10 million tons of hydrogen, of clean hydrogen inside Europe until 2030, and to import 10 million tons of clean hydrogen. So this will even boost the development of hydrogen in Germany and of course in Europe as well.
And I mean, in terms of, you know, and we'll get on to the Middle East and the region where I'm sitting as well as a potential supplier, obviously, but just let's talk a bit about government policies. And Europe has been so much ahead of the game generally in the energy transition, including the steps it's taken towards hydrogen so far. But are there any particular sort of tools that you would say from a policy point of view should be improved to encourage more private investment to come into that game? I mean, is there something missing there that you would see an immediate improvement is calling out for?
Yeah, it's what is still missing. It's as I said, a lot of companies are willing to invest in money, and there's a lot of money which can be directed into hydrogen. What is still missing is a clear regulation from governments. What is green hydrogen, and where do you get credits for green hydrogen? What needs to be applied? And here we are lacking clarity. So it's and if there's no clear rules of the game, which we don't have right now, I don't want to step too much into the details, but to define what in fact is green or clean hydrogen. Mm-hmm. If the rules are not in place, industry is hesitating to invest. And this needs to be solved in the next months, years, of course, it's a big, we don't have a technology issue with hydrogen. The technology is ready. It can be scaled up. Of course, it can always be improved, the technology. This is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is now that we need clear regulation in place. What we will need in addition, at least in the beginning for the first years, is governmental support as well, since clean hydrogen, green hydrogen will be in the beginning more expensive than hydrogen, gray hydrogen made of natural gas or other fossil resources. So here we need for a few years, maybe maximum 10 years support to get this in place. It's similar to renewables. When we started with renewables some 15, 20 years ago, it was very costly. And today renewables are, or wind or solar, are cheaper than coal or gas or nuclear. So
yeah, I mean, and how, I mean, on the sort of regulation front, is that you've got to get the regulation in place, the taxonomy argument in Europe, in the EU as well, as those definitions aren't quite there yet. Again, back to my sort of first question of, you know, what will make that happen? I mean, what are we waiting for? Why aren't we seeing this yet? As you said, the technology is there. That's the most complicated part. So why are the regulatory policy parts taking so long? What's challenging that? What priorities are being looked at instead of that?
Yeah, well one thing is that to our view, still some are dreaming of an all-electric society. So hydrogen is not a real topic in these areas. But I'm working for electric utilities, or an electricity man as well. But we learned in the recent years that we cannot save the world. We cannot really develop energy transition only with electrons, with green electrons. We will need green molecules as well. And this needs to be done in parallel, and we need to start now. But this is not in everybody's mind yet. And we need to be very fast here, very quick to accelerate the development. We don't have the time to wait anymore.
I mean, in terms of the supply chain for clean hydrogen that's there at the moment, whether it's, you know, the technology that's there and what's needed, where would you identify, are there any immediate improvements on the technical part, on the technology part, that could be done on that front? Where do we need to see more investment come in into fuel cells, etc.? From an infrastructure point of view as well, where would you say is the top priority today to get the ball rolling quicker?
Yeah, technology-wise, starting with productions in the value chain, it's of course improve electrolyzers, getting costs down. It's still a lot of it's handmade so scaling up production, cheaper production, more more reliable units with more experience. So we have to ramp up production, scale up productions. This is the biggest challenge we have on the production side in technology, to gigawatt scale electrolyzers or multi-megawatt electrolyzers. In infrastructure, we need to build pipelines. This is not really a challenge. This is a well-known technology, but this is again more, you need the license to do it, and which could be difficult. And on the off-taker side, who needs hydrogen, of course, here improvement as well is necessary. So processes have to be adopted. For instance, the steel making process. If we switch here from coke production to hydrogen production, or if we look into chemicals and synthetic air fuels or whatever, this technology is basically it's there and it can be done, and it has been done in the past. But we need to scale it up, and the biggest challenge, technology-wise, in all areas, is to scale up the technology.
Yeah, I want to scale up. Also, no more pilot projects, and let's really take everything to scale and put that to the test. Let's look a little bit about the Middle East here, where I'm based, in terms of being a clean hydrogen supplier or product of clean hydrogen export to countries like Germany and to Europe. A lot of investment happening here in that, from the NOCs here, putting billions of dollars towards hydrogen projects. Obviously early days, but one or two of the arguments always talked about here is that what is the Middle East best place to become a product exporter to Europe, or should it be again focusing in on its internal demand, domestic demand, finding off takers in its immediate space before it does that. So in terms of that partnership between the Middle East and Germany and Europe, how advanced do you think that is, and how far should that relationship be pushed?
Yeah, it should be. With Middle East is quite attractive since you have you could build quite cheap renewables. The cost of renewables, especially solar, is very cheap in your area in the Middle East, and this helps to produce cheap hydrogen, which cheap green hydrogen, which is affordable for the industry, makes the industry competitive. They use this green hydrogen. So it's quite interesting to collaborate here with Middle East from a European perspective and of course a German perspective as well. And there are already a lot of initiatives between these areas. One for instance is H2 Global, which is an initiative to implement a green hydrogen trading system with production outside of Europe, outside of Germany, and off-takers in Germany, and implement a contract for difference scheme to subsidize the difference in price to make it possible. And this is the budget for this program is 1 billion euros. So, and to get started with importing hydrogen from areas where it's much cheaper, or can be produced much cheaper than in Germany or Middle Europe. So this is one thing. Of course, we need this energy. Europe will always be an energy importing area. So it's probably will never be self-sufficient with energy production, with renewable energy production. So we need to import energy, and it's of course for Middle East it's quite attractive. On the other hand, what we need to, or what should be done as well, is that you go steps further in the value chain in Middle East as well, not only producing hydrogen, but maybe producing sustainable air fuels or whatever, or green methanol, and export these products to Europe, which could be economically quite beneficial for this area, for the Middle East area as well.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the argument between blue and green hydrogen obviously being coming from renewables power and the cleanest option out there, but obviously blue in terms of natural gas feed stock into that already available. The Middle East is a natural depot for that, being very natural gas rich. And some are arguing that this, as natural gas anyway is becoming the replacement fuel for oil, let's not hurry too much on the green track for hydrogen. Let's really make the most of what we can get from blue hydrogen through pipeline, etc., whatever it might be, producing hydrogen with natural gas. What do you make of that argument? I mean, in terms of where funds or investment should go, should we be focusing more on the immediate blue option?
Yeah, it's not an either or. It's we need both. And one thing, we looked heavily into blue as well. On the other hand, looking into the gas prices we have in Europe right now, not in the Middle East area, but the European area, blue is struggling since the prices have exploded. Mm-hmm. And yeah, of course, it's at the end it's economics and it's taxonomy. So what is then clean, or no, which blue path is green or is clean enough, since you don't have 100% reduction with blue, and where does the industry using this hydrogen get the credits for? So if they need green, which in some European regulations it must be green, so it is stated. It's green, that blue is not an option. Others, there might be an option for blue. At the end, the market will decide on this.
I mean, as you said, it's what incentives should users have to use this or that? That's, the certification, how do you measure, the tools about measuring who's using what and what credits they get as a result, or what incentives really that you're providing. Again, that scenario, we look at the carbon price in general across the world has not been agreed to in terms of carbon price, and trying to get agreement on that. So that still filters down in the same way to hydrogen and how to measure the use of that, and how companies, if you like, get rewarded for making that commitment. Yeah. How critical is that to propelling more usage of this resource?
Yeah, I guess it's the most critical way. On one side, of course, we have economics, blue against green. Blue today could be cheaper, and but we will be with green. We will be economically competitive to gray in 10 years from now. So then there will be somewhere break even between blue and green. And the other one is taxonomy credits, and this is quite critical. So if I don't want to step too much into this detailed European regulation, but if you don't get credits for blue, it doesn't help you anyway. So if for instance, this H2 global system, this will not allow blue. So this is only this dedicated to green hydrogen, and blue that doesn't play a role here. So if you want to get this funding, this contract for difference funding from an industry point of view, investor point of view, blue doesn't help. So we need to look quite carefully in which areas blue can play a role, and where green is better. And therefore, it's not an either or. It's more we need both.
And how absolutely, and how in terms of the funding towards these projects, clearly there's different types of finance. There's government support, there's the private sector. Of course, there's the whole finance sector, which lends into the private sector, and it now has its own criteria. You know, ESG criteria are increasing by the day in terms of who they can finance, how they can finance projects. Clearly, hydrogen is a nice, clean product out there. But again, what will it take? Do you think, is there a way to incentivize more funding into hydrogen on the private sector? Is it needed, or are financiers fighting to get into projects?
Yeah, European Commission yesterday announced for this RePower EU plan, which is not only hydrogen, of course, it's a lot of renewables as well, but it's a 300 billion euro package. So that's a lot of money. And of course, it depends in which direction this goes, but there will be enough for hydrogen. Probably money-wise, it's not the biggest problem right now. It's more regulation and get things started.
Right, and on the regulatory front, would you distinguish between regions on that front? You've got Europe, and of course that's where you're based, and that's where you're involved. Regulation here in the Middle East across all industries, but for hydrogen, that's a big argument here that, you know, it's still it's in an infancy here. But again, there's not enough clarity on policy here, and the chicken and the egg of, you know, trying to secure off-takers before people invest in hydrogen, etc. What, you know, is a high oil price today of $100+? Does that propel the alternatives argument, or does it not? You know, what will put that impetus forward?
Yeah. Of course, high oil price and the exploding gas prices in Europe. This all helps. On the other hand, these prices are quite volatile. So they might be down in 3 years from now if the war ends, hopefully as soon as possible. If the war ends, the prices will probably go down again. Maybe it's still a ban on Russian gas and oil, but we will never reach the same level as maybe last year. But price will again go down. So you need to have be more on the safe side, and therefore we need clear regulations, clear framework to invest in, where we're based on for a basis for our investments.
And would you say, again, because of the current crisis in Europe in terms of the threat to energy security, particularly for countries like Germany and Hungary and others, very reliant on Russian gas and other gas, just as an aside, the whole nuclear argument has come back. Obviously, Germany took a big decision a few years ago to stop its nuclear power, and perhaps now is reconsidering it. If that does come to the fore, does that impact at all the momentum for hydrogen and other sort of new energy, if you like?
Yeah, in general, what always helps is if we have CO2-free green electricity sources to produce clean hydrogen, of course. And here we have renewables. Nuclear is an option as well. What a little bit is missing with nuclear right now is economics. So it's the reactors which are, at least in Europe, under construction are extremely expensive. Here we are waiting for a new generation, small scale, small modules of reactors, but this is still more or less PowerPoint. So it's not a quick solution. So I guess before we will be able to produce clean hydrogen with new nuclear, this will take a few years from now. So it's easier today to invest in green in renewables.
Renewables, and let's just to go back onto the Middle East products. You know, if we can use our renewables strength here in the Middle East in terms of making hydrogen products like ammonia, as you said, and shipping them to Europe. How soon? I mean, as you said, there's been 1 or 2 experimental shipments of ammonia from here, for example, to Japan. Aramco has done that. But how viable and realistically do you think, how quickly can that be ramped up?
That's not my biggest expertise, to be honest, on shipping. But we have, of course, if you produce fuels like sustainable air fuel, so this tankers this is not a big issue. I guess ammonia as a liquid fuel shouldn't be a big issue as well. It becomes more a challenge if you look into liquid hydrogen, because it has to be cooled down to minus 200 some degrees. So this is a really big challenge. Maybe liquid like ammonia and sustainable air fuel, so synthetic diesel, this is probably not a big issue transport-wise.
What about the conversion of pipelines, existing pipelines for hydrogen? Does that is that a viable option? Is it expensive? Does it make sense?
This is a viable option, and especially Netherlands is looking deeply into using existing pipelines, which are not anymore in use for natural gas. So there are a lot of pipelines which could be fit for hydrogen, and the pipe itself is not the problem. So we have to do a little bit on valves, some compressors, but this is doable. So we don't have to dig too much into the earth and to build new systems. If you have pipelines which are out of operation, gas pipelines, they can be used.
And Dr. Weinmann, just to go back to my first question, really to loop back to that, in terms of today's situation in Europe and the conflict in Ukraine, it's a lot of market watchers are saying it's totally changed the energy security equation in Europe. You know, Europe has always felt very secure. It's got its partnerships. It brings in gas from America, from Asia, from the Middle East. And oil, there's been a fundamental structural shift in that energy security. Yeah. And clearly Europe right now is scrambling and having conversations every day on how to deal with the immediate. But what do you think, what will be the legacy of this Ukraine war? Are we going to just go back to normal once this is all over? Or, you know, what do you think will be the lessons learned and the real changes in policy from a European angle?
Yeah, I guess there will be some key learnings. One will be diversification. So don't rely too much on a single supplier. So, for instance, Germany had almost 50% of gas supply was from Russia. In Austria, it was 80%. So don't rely too much on a single country, which is not easy to handle, so to say. So and a key learning what we will have in the future is much more diversification. So there's a lot more sources for supply, and this will be the same for hydrogen as well, or hydrogen derivatives or whatever, or LNG, which is starting right now. And we will see this for coal as well, for oil. So we don't rely too much on this almost single sourcing or too much dependency on one supplier.
Well, Dr. Weinmann, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for your time on that. Thank you so much, Dr. Weinmann from Vattenfall Innovation and from the German Hydrogen Association, for joining us today on the Full Court Press Hydrogen interview. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thanks a lot.